Can someone else go and I'll jump back? Thanks.
Sure, Joshua Myers.
So I guess my main thing that I do is category theory. I'm a graduate student, so and I'm just getting into it. I haven't started research yet, is what I mean. But I know a bunch of category theory. I'm doing community development in the applied category theory community. And among other things, I'm trying to be a liaison between this and other communities. And I think that the blockchain community has a lot of, I don't know, they would collaborate really well on various things. And in particular, I don't know how exactly to initiate the collaboration because the people don't really know each other in the two communities very well. I guess I can link to one thing that I think might be useful for talking about knowledge ontologies. Where's the chat? I can't find the chat. There it is. Here, so resource theories I think are, I don't know enough to know, but I think that this might be helpful. I'm not sure. Anyway, basically just a really high level overview. Category theory is useful for defining formal languages, and it's useful for describing structures. So both of those things would be good. It's kind of just like the, it could be like the deepest of the deep code underlying a schema for, like what Michael Zargham said was we need the shared basic logic for interoperability. I also have a part-time job at Connexus.ai, which is which is doing databases with category theory in better ways. So they have, for example, categorical query language, a version of SQL. So I hope to be a liaison, so get in touch with me if you're interested in this.
Fantastic, thanks Joshua. Chris Jones?
Is that me? All right. So, yeah, I'm Chris. I right now I'm working with the Common Stack, TBTC and Keep, as well as Don't Buy Meme. And I've also been working with Metagame a bit, helping with Meta Radio and a few other regular things there. I've been in the space for a while, worked on, I wrote my master's thesis in sociology and surveillance studies, looking at blockchain communities and different ways that we kind of self-select and where we go. Really excited about being able to talk about our credentials and different kinds of different skills that we have verified throughout the community, and I've had I've kind of run into some of these issues too. We've done, particularly with Keep and TBDC, we've done a lot of translation to other languages for our documentation and that kind of thing, and quality assurance and things like that has been trickier to do. So something like this would be really great for even just translation work, but really excited about the whole holistic idea that we're pushing here. So that's about it for me. I'll pass to the next person. Jess, I'm not sure who is on the list.
That would be L. Just L.
Hi, yeah, this is Lewis here. I'm been around, crypto a while, and also through like the birth of NFTs back when it was on Counterparty. Currently working with Deorg, so kind of like mercenary contract work. So every couple of weeks working on some other project in the DeFi space. And just interested to kind of see what everyone's up to, brainstorm and work on a standard.
Thank you, Lewis.
Can we bounce back to Joel now that we've got he came back?
Sweet, thanks. All right, so I'm gonna share something we've been working on for a while. It's a protocol called Ceramic Network, and it's basically a system we designed drawing insights from the work we've been doing at 3Box. for things that are kind of needed for various things. And it's kind of a lot of things to cover, so I'm just gonna quickly highlight the most important aspects. So I believe you can see my Google Slides here. Let me know if not. So a ceramic network is essentially just like a network of mutable documents. The content is stored in IPFS, and it's anchored on a blockchain, currently Ethereum testnet. So you have users, and users are represented by decentralized identifiers, DIDs. And they can create documents, and they can update these documents. And each individual document in the ceramic network has a immutable document ID, which when you change the document, this keeps the same ID. So for example, here in this diagram, we see that this user here to the left might have like a document which he puts some work in, like describes what he's done or whatever. And then he might have another document which like points to the users he trusts, and a bunch of other documents. And then like as time goes on, like the view in the network might change. And like all updates are periodically timestamped into the blockchain, which means that we kind of get some proof of how the network has changed over time. The document log, and I'm going to show a quick diagram of that, is stored in IPFS. And one cool thing about this, the users, they're represented by a DID. We can actually cryptographically link that DID from an Ethereum address. We have support for Filecoin, Polkadot, Cosmos, to just link all these different blockchain accounts you might have into like one identifier. A ceramic document kind of looks like this. You have commits, and so you have a Genesis commit that creates a document. Then you have an anchor commit that anchors it in a blockchain. Then you have signature commits that makes updates with patches to the content. The content of the document can, by the way, be verified to conform to a JSON schema. And these anchors can be batched. So we right now have a service that takes a bunch of documents and updates and batch them into like one blockchain transaction. And when you sync a specific ceramic document, you only need to sync that data of that specific document. So you don't have the same kind of scalability issues as you have with a blockchain where you kind of need to sync the entire blockchain. That was quick and kind of very high level. We have documentation and stuff. We are also building a next version of 3box called IDX on top of this. So you can check that out on these links. I'm going to try to link them. Yeah, that's it. Thanks. And yeah, I hope this can be used kind of as like, I think it could be used as like a base layer for many of the things that we're talking about today. So yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, if you can share it, perfect, the links, and I'll add them to the notes. And Livia?
Hi, everyone. I'm working with the cultural build of the Token Engineering Commons, and I'm also part of the Commons Stack team. And most of this work has been to implement Ostrom's principles in our system design. And I think one of the biggest challenges is exactly this. How do we empower people with the knowledge they're bringing, especially to an empirical case that the theory is being born from our experiment, and we're bringing Ostrom's theory that came from her empirical work to our empirical work that will become a theory for hopefully other commons to come and use this. So it's very interesting for us to understand how to tokenize this, empower people, and hopefully get others in this movement. And I'll pass it back to you, Jess.
Thanks, Livy. And Luke from One Hive.
Hey guys, Luke here. I think in the context of this, the most relevant intro is that One Hive has these like profiles that we built on 3box, and they're very basic, just with a 3box structure. But we would love to extend them to show like skills and kind of credentials, because it'll allow people to kind of know a bit more what the like background or context or skills or expertise of the people that they're interacting with when they're like dealing with proposals on in our DAO or dealing with comments and stuff. So mostly we're not actively like pursuing a standard yet, but we would love to work with everybody here to make sure that we can expose the information in a consistent way. Jessica.
Thanks, Luke. Magenta, welcome.
Hey, this is amazing. Thank you all for working on this. I'm from Bloom Network. It's a network of about 30,000 people working, doing on-the-ground actions like agroecology farming, cooperatives, policy development, stuff like that. So we're looking at implementing a portable profile system of some kind over the next 3 to 6 months to match skills and also resources. So I'm looking for X, and I have a surplus of X, for example. Yeah, definitely +1 to the protocol level, because I don't imagine we'll get all the networks that we want to interoperate with into the same profiles like widget or whatever. Yeah, we have a bunch of people, probably like tens of thousands, like want to onboard as soon as possible to be able to have visibility with each other. So definitely happy to be part of this conversation. Thanks.
Awesome. Max.
Hey guys, Max here, calling in from Hong Kong. Also, Mihai from our team's also here. Excited to be here. Found a lot of the Common Stack stuff by reading about sort of DAO approaches for sustainable governance. The company I'm currently building is called Carbon Base. It is a sort of climate change finance company. So we hope to route traditional finance into climate needs. Recently we started a side project called Project Arc, and we've been inspired by the digital scarcity of NFTs with the actual scarcity of endangered animals. So we decided to make NFTs for endangered animals. After 6 months of work, we managed to sign an MOU with the WWF. So it's the official collaboration now with Panda Labs, and we'll be creating our first batch of NFTs hopefully next month, and over the next few months, hopefully launch in several locations around the world. Helping drive sort of NFT-backed donations into conservation projects. Excited to dive into a bit more on the technical side. I think we're really on the applied side of things. So we're trying to bridge the physical world with the sort of crypto world, and then looking backwards along the chain. I think there's a lot of cool technologies being developed that sort of make our jobs possible. And love to learn from you guys. Thanks.
Looking forward to the narwhal card. Mihai, did you want to add anything?
I'm not sure. Can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah. So I'm Mihai. I'm from Romania and been a big part of Project Arc. And I'm really excited to see how we can apply the theoretical sort of framework from Ostrom and how we can put the right incentives into place. And excited to learn more about what it's, from all the other actors and how we can leverage our on-the-ground experience and what we're doing with the other actors. So, yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Nemanja, I hope I'm not butchering your name.
No, it's good. Yeah. Hi everyone, it was last minute call by Pete. I'm working with a couple of people from the ETH Global. We started with kind of like a proof of experience platform where the idea was kind of like unlock for people that are using different DeFi protocols to unlock different achievements, and that would be the representative of the NFT. And that was the first part, which is more like kind of like artsy. But then the second part was that opportunities that you can do with that, such as the composability. For example, one of the ideas that we had and we are still exploring with protocols is if people did a couple of interesting things on their protocol, to get something like a composable NFT that is giving them 100% discount on the swag of that company. And in that way, you can kind of like match people that are active users of a protocol with kind of like being your real promoters. And that's just one of the things that we're exploring right now. We're in the middle of building it. I think that in the next month and a half, we will release it. Code name is Moongate. We will see if that will stay from the Chinese architecture, not connected with Moon and the whole thing in crypto. And yeah, I'm really curious how these kind of achievements and proof of experiences, and let's call it wallet reputation, can be used in the future I really believe that it can be used on so many different levels. And I'm more than happy to kind of like build a protocol where all of this data that we manage to kind of like combine in the achievements give the opportunity to others to build on top of it, whatever it is, maybe boosting governance, voting, or some incentivization for the regular users and active users, or anything else that can be composed. So I'll keep you posted, and I hope that I'll join this community to help out with everything that I can.
Wonderful. And Pet? From Metagame?
No, hello. Yeah, Pet from Metagame. We had this idea of building skill trees for a long time, and yeah, noticed a bunch of other DAOs also had this idea. And one of the things we started collaborating on was the achievement factory, which is like for minting NFT achievements. And yeah, we wanted to do it internally in Metagame, but then we noticed that Raid Guild also wanted to do it, and some others. So we decided to make it a DAO of its own, which is called Achievement. And yeah, hoping to kick off another such collaboration with this call that yeah, MZ told me about, and I invited a bunch of people.
Awesome. Scott?
Hey guys, I'm Scotchpreneur working on Rabbit Hole. We started up Rabbit Hole a few months ago and are rewarding users for trying out the different protocols. And so we've teamed up with the different protocols, Aave, Matcha, and giving away a few governance tokens for participating and doing different on-chain actions and showing participation in the systems, trying to teach people how to get started. And hopefully we can use these as building blocks into the greater skill trees.
Very cool. I haven't dived down that rabbit hole, but heard of it. Very cool to look into it. And Sean, YGG.
Thanks, Jess. Hey, everyone. Sean here, YGG, very active in the TEC community, working as a token engineer with Boson Protocol and Spirit Foundation. Also deeply engaged with Longtail Financial, which is a sort of chaotic DAO of data scientists and developers. So I think what I would like to see as a solution to this problem is sort of like a passive peer-to-peer network modeling approach. And I don't think, I just happened to pop open Zargham's, we don't need any more platforms, we need standards. And I think that's what we have. We have so many platforms. We're on a platform right now. So I think what would be cool is if we could click a button and sort of capture, everyone who's in this call right now. I think we're all authenticated through Google, Gmail, or something along those lines. So now we have Gmail IDs, and then if we look at Discord, you can go into any Discord server and capture all the IDs in there, and you start to get this, then it's a entity resolution problem. So if you can map like Gmail accounts to Discord tags to Twitter accounts to Ethereum IDs on 3box, then we can build this like comprehensive network model, and then you could do something like the PageRank algorithm. So we might just manually score, certain people in the community who we know are of a high rank, and then if they've been in 20 calls with this person, then we can assume that that person probably has some significance or importance in the community, and etc. So this is how Google was built and sort of organized the internet, and I think we could organize these DAO-to-DAO relationships in a similar way.
Brilliant. Feel free to put some of those in the notes as well, Sean. That would be great.
Thanks,
Your
Jess.
thoughts. And Sherman.
Hey, can you hear me? Hi, thanks for the invite. I'll keep it short. For those who don't know me, my name is Shermin. I'm running Token Kitchen. Before that, I started Blockchain Hub and the Crypto Economics Institute, where I met Zargham, and through that, many other people. And I'm working on the intersection of research education and to understand token economies, focusing on the ethical and economic engineering side of it. And I wrote the book Token Economy, put it online as a Creative Commons, under a Creative Commons license, and that could maybe be some material for people to play around with NFTs. So I actually also collaborating with Pictosis, gave them the book so they can use this to build their prototypes around that. I'm interested in these sustainable NFTs. So I was really amazed by, I think Max was it, who was telling us creating NFTs for animals. So I'd love to know more about that. In my next step, I will be focusing on coming up with a token framework for purpose-driven token to incentivize CO2 emission reduction, biodiversity, that kind of stuff. And I'm sure there's some of the things that we can apply also to that. Yeah.
Brilliant. And Sparrow.
Source cred. Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Is Sparrow still here? Can you hear us?
I am. I just unmute. Hi, everyone. Peth invited me. I'm in metagame with him. We are looking at skill trees, and they've been looking at it for well before I got there. I think probably the unique contribution that I can give is we're not looking just at technical skills. We're also looking at player well-being. So that might tie into the yoga that was mentioned previously. But it would be nice to have a framework in place to fit those kinds of things into. And lastly, I'll put in a link to an overview of another project that I'm involved in that Jessica's aware of, which is the data and visible economy. And so we're going even one step beyond just well-being and trying to represent in NFT form intrinsic motivations and intrinsic rewards, and measuring those in some way to be able to represent more than just mental and physical well-being, but the whole person and their intrinsic needs. So I think that might be a bit beyond the scope of this, but it's something to start thinking about because it might open up other possibilities. And it's in the chat. But thank you for having me here.
Wonderful. Balancing out the quantification. Okay, and Tanner has a lot to share, I'm sure.
Luckily, I won't be ranting today because I'm pretty tired. Yeah, so my name is Tanner. I work on the smart contracts team at Maker Foundation for formal verification. Also creating Pictosis, which is another kind of different application of NFTs where we're trying to basically solve the problem of how you can't make information goods scarce simply by putting them on a blockchain and calling them NFTs, because it's the data itself that's valuable, not necessarily the higher level concept of ownership. And Pictosis is just this graph-based network that has attribution built in, and we call them non-fungible systems as the nodes, but they're just canonical copies that track a piece of content, basically authorized piece of content across the web, and all of those sorts of signals propagate upwards through the network so that you can build platforms composed of different pieces of content with constraints around them. So, for example, taking some token from Ethereum and then some other, and then maybe interacting with the DAO somewhere else and linking that to data on IPFS or Ceramic, but applying constraints to all of them. So we do a lot with the composition aspect. So would love to talk to the guy who is doing applied category theory as well, because it's hugely important for us. But anyway, that's the brief rundown. So we're working with trying to build a Web3 publishing houses as well as one example of what this can do. Yeah, that's it.
Great. And Unknown.
Yeah, hi. I'm Tom, ABCXD on Discord. I'm mainly here through deep work, and Pat invited me. But yeah, I'm mainly interested in the permissionless nature of work and how people can propose to do work, and how identity systems can help by that. I'd love to work on product design with all of these things.
Great, thanks, Tom. And Siwan?
Hi, I go by ZX. Usually I go last. I work on Falcon Crypto Economics at Protocol Labs. I think so. Falcon Network is live, and I think behaviors, patterns of interactions, and like standards are all emerging. And an observation that we made is that like the underlying data structure in the Falcon ecosystem, which is like CIDs, I think like IPFS runs a lot of the data structure as well, which is a pretty, which lends itself very nicely to NFTs, right? Because you have this unique CID and a network of CIDs. And a few topics that we are interested in and thinking about include like some notion of data supply chain, data DAO, networks of NFT, networks of economic value, how do you do attribution flow, and so on and so forth. So I'm very excited to be here to learn and share with all of you, and then we can chart new territory for our space and humanity.
Beautiful. And one person, Sam, didn't get to go. Sam Dagdalin?
Hello, I'm Jem, and I'm the founder of Curve Labs. Don't worry, it happens all the time. And one of the things I'm looking into these days is interaction patterns between decentralized organizations and how to create negotiation protocols that facilitate this type of ecosystemic plasticity and coordination. And so in that, towards that goal, we had a call with Z early on, and he said that this particular call or efforts that you guys are putting together is very relevant. So I found myself here, basically. So I will leave you discussing.
Nice to see you, Gemma. We have the last two people, and we're trying to wrap in 3 minutes so we can have some time to collaborate. So there's Dan. Just a quick introduction.
Oh, hi. Hey, and Dan, I got here very late, sorry. But I'm very curious because, well, right now I'm basically working with the common stack. So pushing forward like this rethinking of the trusted seed. If you are in the trusted seed, or maybe you're not in the trusted seed, would love to reach out. I will put the link in the chat. But otherwise, yeah, at some point in my life, I represented Coursera in my home country, Venezuela. So I'm very, very interested in these logics, and have had conversations with people in the, EdTech community across the world on how we factor in the different ways of learning, and played a little bit of putting together a project with some friends that's actually I exit on VR, augmented reality for education and basically for children to develop the different kinds of intelligence. So that was fun. So yeah, I'm just curious, very curious, and sadly see it's not being recorded. So damn. But otherwise, happy to be here.
We are recording. And the last person to go that I'm aware of is Guild Clerics. And then we can wrap the introductions.
Hey, I'm Tay. I'm a cleric with the Raid Guild and involved in some other the metacartel ecosystem. Just kind of last minute invited here, so just here to listen in, and I think I have a meeting at the top of the hour, so we might have to dip out pretty soon, but hopefully we can get jump started now. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Z, do you want to take it away with some thoughts and have a little bit of riff session?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to be short. So collaboration methodology, since we just spent a ton of time introducing a ton of awesome people who are super productive, what we don't want is to have lots of calls and not do anything. So in terms of collaboration modes, this is what I'm thinking. we should have a document, which is a draft spec. And although I wrote a sort of proto spec, it was ideation based on the sort of observed persistent ontology of skills, meaning like historical back, millennia, humans sort of attesting to each other's skills at things, forming a kind of graph social network which underlies how we assess or evaluate people for doing things. So we all have intuited that, we've built parts of it, we get it. We need to figure out how to encode it or represent it in a way that fits with the technological tools in Web3. We need to synthesize our understanding to accomplish that in a way that we all want to use it. So what I want to do is to create whether it's a GitHub repo or a HackMD, or again, we can discuss tooling, a place where we co-author and ideally version control that spec. Hell, if you guys want to, we can even use one of the tools that came from one of the teams here. Obviously, document chains sound pretty interesting. It depends on ease of UX because I don't want to hold the project up by the tool friction, so we can discuss it. But that's the primary thrust that I'm going for. Collaborating on a specification that represents that, what I called earlier, the least common denominator of this, and then think like ERC20s, like when they finally got released, or NFTs in the 721s. When the first prototype showed up, they just blew up into existence because they were just so simple and everyone just added their own bit on top of it. That's what we want. We don't want lots of features. We want the minimalist features possible so that if you just inherit that class and do more, cool, but you still adhere to the standard. So that's my real selling point here, is that why we need this group and not just someone to do the project, but we should be focused on getting the simplest possible complete specification together relatively quickly, and that then from there, or even in parallel with there, we want any number of prototypes that adhere to the standard. Because if we produce a simple specification and a half dozen prototypes that fit in different ecosystems that actually interoperate, at least at the ontological or data structure level, so that I can literally reference something in another paradigm, then we win, and that thing can grow and we can have this organic skill forest that we want and need. So I'm going to stop rambling. I think we should talk about who's interested in participating in that, what tools we should use to collaborate on that, and maybe even consider in the future breaking up between people who want to work on specific prototypes that apply the sort of standard in the works versus the people who want to work on literally writing that standard. And those two things obviously feed back on each other. So they may not need to split off, or maybe not split off immediately, but that's the goal here. And I know we spent a ton of time introducing people, but I think it's important because it's collecting that knowledge, that real experience that's going to result in what I'll call the hard-fought simplicity. Like any one of us could write down probably a spec for this, but we'd all write down a different one. We need one that we all can actually work with. Mic drop.
Thank you. Yeah, give us the next steps.
So the next steps for me, I think, is some sort of what tools do we want to use to coordinate on spec writing? So I suspect everybody uses different things. I do a lot of work in HackMD. I know it's pretty lame, but it's easy to share and collaborate. But I don't know what other people use. If we want to work together on something, we need a kind of obviously a goal. I just tried to outline it. But then a tool and some mode of coordination. Because I suspect a lot of the work will happen asynchronously with some periodic synchronous calls. And so in order to make that happen, the minimum viable decisions on a group like this are, what tool are we using? How are we going to distribute information? But I don't want to say create a whole nother DAO. Everybody's in a bunch of DAOs already. You all know there's a ton of overhead. What I want is to just harness the mutual need for this solution and get something effectively into production as quickly as possible.
So
Jess,
question.
or Pet, or go ahead.
I was just going to say quickly, I think HackMD is really appealing to me. I think GitHub would work, but HackMD has a slight edge. And the other thing I was going to say, I think it would be a good exercise, basically if every single person here came up with a set of functions that they think this standard should have, and then we could see what's the intersection between what everyone is looking for.
Okay, that makes sense. is there I guess we didn't put any procedure in place for having, like, it's a huge group, right? So I don't know if the fastest thing to do will be to spin up some sort of HackMD and just share it in the channel so that we all have the link to the same empty document. So it may be useful to have some Shelling Point comms channel. So I don't know if we can get a sense of if there's any particular Discord server that we're like actually all members in, or that we can put a shared channel between 2 Discord servers that will cover the majority of this group. Like that's another like tactical item that could make this more productive without having like high overhead.
I would propose, or was thinking, token engineering is where a lot of these research collaborations are spinning up. So I could just easily create an token engineering NFT research group, or whatever we want to call it, skill forest group, and we could align there if everybody's okay with that.
I think the main problem is getting like people from other communities to like become a standard member of a Discord server. Like it's much easier to get people to respond in like Telegram chat than like Discord servers.
That seems fine. If we want to have a Telegram chat for the working group, I think that would work, because although Telegram is not particularly persistent, as long as we have a shared set of 2 to 3 web-based documents that we're collaborating in, that would provide for the persistence in addition to the transient nature of Telegram. Again, feel free to like chime in chat or out loud if you have any objections. This is really just like, we're doing a bit of org hacking right now. We want to collaborate, we want minimum overhead, we have specific goals, and so getting documents into existence, we have a Telegram channel, Jess, Peth, etc. Maybe we can add other people to it. If you want to be added to the channel, maybe say so in the text chat here now, so that we can grab a cap of those people and make sure they get added. And then we can share the links to any HackMDs or Google Doc type objects that get spun up there, so that people have access to the persistent. We'll pin them so that you can find them. And then I think what we'll expect to do is kind of circle back in another synchronous call at some point in the not too distant future with a maybe likely smaller group of people who are interested in, directly, discussing divvying up work. Another tool that might be relevant is diagramming. I know I use Lucidchart. Some people use Figma. I've seen a variety of other things. I can always drop drawings in HackMDs or drop drawings in the Telegram channel. But, the nuts and bolts of this is basically figure out if this is something you want to work on. And if you do, please, let's work on it together. But I think the thing that is probably the biggest deal here is we need something that we are confident enough in at the spec level. Again, simplest, useful, minimum viable, least common denominator thing for a spec, so that we can have any number of implementations that share that spec, with maybe the most important caveat being it's okay if it's that stuff and other stuff. It's like a class that you inherit from to make a more more sophisticated class. That way, as long as you have that shared kernel of functionality, things can cross-link each other. Sorry, I know that's repeating myself. Jess, I'm going to throw you the floor, or Peeth. Like, anything else we can do to create these sort of necessary Shelling points for this to proceed productively without lots of overhead?
No, it's pretty straightforward. Yeah, everybody jump in the Telegram. We've got the agenda and notes as a first touch point, and the HackMD will be shared shortly. And if you have any other requests or thoughts, I think there's some people here, obviously it's tech focused, but then we've got lots of, beautiful communicators here. So any documentation that could come, we can go forward through the chat for now. And then we can maybe reschedule a call in a couple of weeks just to touch in and see how things are going.
Amazing.
I'm not hearing MZ.
I said we're going to prove how fast you can do something without having an organization. In fact, part of this is for me a proof that we can do a cool thing in an extra organizational fashion. That we don't need a new organization to do this. All of these organizations want and need this, so let's just get it done without having to make another organization.
No more overhead.
So I want to share. I mean, just the 2 quick riffs here. One riff is actually like similar to how what if we had like DAOs that were created simultaneous to HackMDs, right? So right now DAOs are very expensive to create and maintain. Like I think that hopefully in the future you can actually just have like a Telegram group and it sort of automatically becomes a DAO, and then that then becomes like a unit of identity, like kind of like how like in category theory you have like the basic unit, which is a category. You sort of compose all these categories together and create intersections to create new types of functionality. So I think maybe there's and I would maybe just and I'm happy to sort of think about this more rigorously, but I think drawing from the elemental mathematical atomic units to then design the information pieces, I think could be really useful, because math in some ways is already the most stripped, bare bones representation of existence, and then we can sort of like fill in all the bone in the flesh. Yeah.
Cool. So we are at time. I'm not going to kick anyone off the call, so if people want to chat, talk more about projects, or even start hacking on stuff in the group, feel free, but also don't feel hostage. I never want people to get stuck. I know we're already in way too many fucking meetings. So so that's sort of official close, and sort of it's water cooler time from now on.
Thanks so much for initiating this. I'm looking forward.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all. Bye.
Don't forget
Thank
to
you.
jump in
Bye-bye.
the Telegram chat before you leave.
My body's like buzzing from all the electricity of this superhumans. My nervous system's like trying to process.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thanks, everybody. Looking forward to the collaboration.
What would you say is like the most basic, minimal interface for an NFT?
Sorry, was that a question? I couldn't hear all of it.
Yeah. What's the what is the most basic minimal interface for an NFT? Like what functions must an NFT have?
So if you honestly, the original NFT specification, the ERC 721 was a pretty solid spec. I would argue that we would start there, but you would have to extend to account for some of the linking type metadata, which is what a lot of people here have in common, is that they've been looking at different ways of encoding or representing the linking aspect. So, if you think in a sort of, say, a graph theory way, you're basically saying, look, we got nodes, but nodes aren't very useful without edges. And so in our case, the edges that emerge naturally are, say, an NFT might have an edge to a piece of content, say a CID, a content address of a document. It might have an edge to someone who made an assertion. So if it's a certificate, it might have to have a link to an external account, where that external account is representative of someone who did the signing of your certificate, in the sense, say, yes, you do have these skills. Or if your certificate represents a skill that builds other skills, it might need to have a link to another skill, which you can think of as a dependency, and so on and so forth. So when I talk about the sort of skill trees, I'm thinking about a kind of NFT class that sort of inherits that base 721 class in a sense, but then includes additional functionality about how it relates to content CIDs, how it relates to signatories, meaning what criteria must the person signing off on the skill have. Maybe they also have to have the skill. Furthermore, and again, some of this is in the sort of proto specification draft that I wrote in the metagame forums in response to some discussions with that community about their effort to build skill trees, and in particular the role they fill in their metasys, which is sort of this broader system that supports their community as a sort of real-life MMORPG. So anyway, my point here is then that the point of this working group is like the question you just asked. What is the minimum functionality? Start with an NFT, probably look at the 721, but then think about what else is needed for it to fulfill this core function of attesting to some capability. But my point about the analogy to existing education, like all of the existing education systems are they share a lot of ontological elements, like which institutions, we discussed this, like what entity is signing off on this, what particular person within that entity is signing off on this, does that entity or that person themselves have some, credentialing or qualifications that make it make sense for it to be signing off on things. And a lot of that can emerge from very much one very simple set of rules around credentials. Like we don't need lots of special kinds of credentials. We just need the class or the notion, so that entities with a certain credentialing can be responsible or have the ability to give other kinds of credentialing, which creates something that can grow organically without being necessarily locked in. Okay, so like I said, this is water cooler time, but I've obviously thought about this problem a lot, hence the reason I put some effort into this. So I hope that helps answer your question, Joshua.
Yeah. I wonder if resource theories have anything to do with this. Can I just say what they are briefly?
Sure.
Okay. A resource theory is a set that has a partial ordering defined on it, and it has a symmetric associative unital operation defined on it. And they need to be compatible. So in other words, you have a way of combining things and you have a way of comparing things.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
For instance, money would be represented where the set is positive integers, non-negative integers, and then you combine it through plus, and you compare it through greater than or equal to. But you could also have aptitude, which would be represented where you combine it through max. Like if two people are working together, you take the maximum of their aptitudes, not the sum.
That makes sense. So I think in this case that applies pretty well, though I'm not sure exactly what the operators would be, in the sense that I think we're going to end up with something which has a richer topology in the sense of the emergent relationships between the objects. So we would be instantiating things that link through multiple types of connection. And I'm curious how you would extend that paradigm to account for what is essentially typed relations, meaning skill to skill, skill to entity or skill holder, or skill to, say, artifact, or in this case I generally default to artifact to something with a CID, whether that's a document chain in the sense of ceramic, or a piece of data stored on IPFS in a more native way. It still has a unique identifier in the sense that you couldn't provide something else and pretend it was the thing that was linked. That to me is one of the most important facilities, and I'm curious like how the theory you propose or theories that you have also in mind might relate to the formalisms around linking or connecting or combining things.
Okay, so before I answer, is it true that everything that what I've said so far lacks is in relating different NFTs, or does it lack anything within a single NFT?
I'm not sure if it lacks anything within a single NFT, but I also think that NFTs are already pretty well defined, and I would avoid trying to respecify them, because we want to be fundamentally modular in the sense that we would take the thing that's specified and we would extend it with additional functionality, with the understanding that what we want to extend is minimalist to cover new use cases related to networking or interconnecting these things, but then that we would further expect people to extend from there to meet more specific use cases. That's how we manage the interoperability without lock-in, because we have a lot of projects that are going to take things in their own direction and that they're going to add or extend further, but in extending specialize, and so we retain, again, kernels of sameness.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't think I understand this well enough to really answer yet. I'd have to learn about NFTs, but I can say how various things you could do between resource theories. You could have a map from one to another that preserves all the structure. You could take the Cartesian product of two of them. For instance, if I have an aptitude and an amount of money, you can make a new resource theory where the set is ordered pairs of non-negative integers, and then where the first one represents my money, second one represents my aptitude, and then to combine them, you take the sum of the first element and the max of the second element. And then the order wouldn't be total anymore. It would be strictly partial.
Gotcha. Yeah, I see where you're going. I like the resource theory concept. Here, let me send you. I'm going to drop you a link. This is a, albeit half-written paper that I abandoned in a year or 2 years ago because I was super busy, and I'm actually resurrecting some of this thinking. I'll just fair warning before you tear it apart, because I'm sure you can. It was a working draft that needed revisions, but it has some stronger formalisms under development. Just note that the formalisms are under development because I'm sure you can probably punch some holes in them. It might be a good starting point for what kind of formalisms I think about when I try to solve or define this kind of problem.
Okay, here, I'll look at this. You think this would be the best thing for me to look at first if I'm going to get involved?
You should look at the 720, the Ethereum, the ERC 721 spec, which is the original spec for NFTs. You should probably read the 2 short posts, which are like literally 3 minutes each on metagame, meta pubs and meta skills, which kicked off this discussion. This is actually referenced, the thing I just shared with you, in one of those posts. But reading this is what you should do if you want to understand how I have thus far thought about formalisms. I'm not sure how many people in the group are going to get that far into the mathematical formalisms because I think from my own experience, people are a little bit more on the tangible side. They want to get to specs and code, but so I have a PhD in engineering, and I worked on mathematics and algorithm design and like multi-agent robotics type stuff. So I'm pretty capable in mathematics, and I prefer hard formalisms. Just fair warning that my learnings have been that I kind of have 3 levels. You got to have the sort of deeper understanding where the mathematics is really useful. Then you get to the sort of applied level, which is a bit less like you can be a lot more hand wavy, but you can still get to something working. And you get to implementation where maybe something doesn't quite work how you intended, and you iterate on it. So it's like 3 time scales. Slow, medium, fast, and you got to kind of bundle thinking in all 3 in order to be productive. So that's
I only heard 2. There's deeper understanding, there's applied level, and what's the third one?
Implementation.
Well, implementation, like actually getting something that works and like trying it out and feeding back on both your understanding and your like application. So
I see. So the bridge between the theoretical and applied. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
No, and I mean, this is just like, I guess, sort of generic advice as an applied researcher. There's always this tricky thing where you learn to get the hang of load balancing across the 3 levels in order to be a productive member of a team. And I tend towards the math theory side. So like even things like this exercise was a little bit of a like, all right, like take a deep breath and like, all right, well, the next step's really implementation. So I better get some people who are good at that involved in this project. Anyway, yeah.
Right.
I'm rambling a lot. Hey, Pete, do you have any like comments, context? I feel like you didn't get as much airtime as I would like, and I talk way too much. So I'm curious how you feel like it went.
I think it's pretty good. I'm sorry that like I brought so many people that just introducing everyone took almost a full hour. So yeah, I wish we had more time before the 1 hour was up. But yeah, I don't really have anything to add to this because it's just not my stuff.
So I've got something I'd like to riff on a bit. I'm not really exposed to the work that's been done or the mathematical specifications, so this will be fresh. I don't know how it'll plug in, but I'm thinking of 3 concepts: mastery, consensus, and time. So number 1 is like the journeyman's, like in trades, right? Someone moves from apprenticeship to journeyman into mastery. So I'm thinking about this NFT specification. So you start with the 721, but you add this concept of like level. So any NFT when it's initially minted is an apprentice, or maybe, so if I create an NFT, then maybe I would have the mastery level, and only a master can or a journeyman can grant an apprenticeship NFT. So this NFT could sort of be duplicated to another identity at the apprentice level. And then there could be a time and or consensus constraint for someone to move from the apprentice to the journeyman level and the journeyman to the mastership level. So, and it would, of course, grow with the requirements and moving from level to level. So on the time constraint, it could be like, well, someone just has to hold this NFT for 1 year before their NFT can graduate to the next level, or it could be they need 7 journeyman or 2 or 4 or 5 journeyman level NFT holders to approve them to then move into that journeyman level. And so it could sort of spread, it would spread like a power distribution or kind of virally potentially, because anyone could create an NFT. I could create an NFT and be a master of sword fighting, but that's just my NFT. And if no one else has that NFT, then it might not be respected in the field. There might be a whole other, maybe all the swordsmen actually have their NFT that they've been growing and spreading, and so no one's
the intersubjectivity comes out in that ontology, and I agree with you. Actually, that is more or less what I described in the meta skills protospec. So you should definitely check it out. That's at least the motivating idea. With maybe the caveat that rather than taking the same NFT and leveling it up, I think it's far more natural for the NFTs to be dependent. So like if I issue you, say I initiated a master level sort of token engineering NFT, and I would probably initialize that with multiple other people. So like I would initialize it, and folks like Marcus and Fernando, and ZX actually I oversaw his master's thesis at Penn. So I like worked with him on a bunch of stuff that led into Filecoin. So like having had that experience, I could essentially issue my own. I could decide this is going to be the master one, and I give the master one out to people. But then I could also instantiate, to your point, a bunch of expert and journeyman and apprentice level ones with this caveated logic that holders of master can approve the submission of expert and so on down the chain to beginner. But that one of the interesting things about this is that you would keep those people themselves even as signatories, as metadata. So the web that emerges in the skills, it's not just that you have an expert level. You would actually be able to look at that token and see who had signed you your expert level. And you might even be interpreted differently depending on who you had signed it. Because although the web fills out, the actual level of interpreting it is on the eye of the beholder. So like even within a particular NFT, there could be distinctions, much like, hey, like I have a PhD from Penn, and part of that is the metadata of who my PhD advisor was. Well, it turns out my PhD advisor is now a department chair at MIT. So like somehow my Penn credential has this extra star that's extra valuable, because if you look at it, it's PhD in electrical and systems engineering, University of Pennsylvania, signatory Ali Jabbabai. Well, if you follow the graph to Ali Jabbabai and see that, Ali Jabbabai is the, director of socio-technical systems and head of the civil engineering department at MIT now, it's actually changed the interpretation of that same credential. So like, it's actually kind of interesting to see how the actual graphical nature of the data can actually change the interpretation of the same facts as the graph grows in time.
It sounds like we want a big database.
No, we want the opposite of a big database. We want something that can be interpreted as a big database, but isn't. And this is nuanced, right? The reason I say it's not a big database is because all we're actually defining is the schema. And then the database itself exists, not even necessarily within one, blockchain or platform paradigm. The idea is that anything that adheres to this standard schema can be pulled into and interpreted as a big database. But the act of pulling it into and using it as a big database is not it itself. It's the act of beholding it. So we could grab a slice of it and look at it and analyze it and act on it, but because it itself isn't the database, this is like saying that the internet or like the search engine is the internet. It's not. The search engine indexes the internet and then we consume it. Who we go through matters. In this case, again, this is like an internet of skills. And what ends up happening is you decide what context you're looking at and which portal you're accessing it through, and in doing so, it affects what you see and how you interpret it. So we're not building a big database, we're building something for which you can build a big database.
I see. So you want to be able to just query the internet.
Kind of, but in this case, it's not query the internet, it's query the set of all things that adhere to the standard. Let's take a traditional publication model that could be, matched to something like the, I don't know, like the Dewey Decimal System, library science, right? So you have these schemes for imposing like a schema over all things, even if you don't have all those things. And the idea is that any new thing that came into existence would still fit into that scheme. And then you don't need to have all the books to understand how all the books are described, including the notion of authors and citations, etc. So I use actually publication standards as a gateway drug to the skills standards problem, because I think a publication standard is just a slightly simpler version of the same problem, because now all I need to worry about is my NFT and its link to a content ID and its link to its authors and possibly its link to its dependencies. And if you have the NFT to NFT links that say, I cited that thing, and NFT to person link that says, hey, those were the authors. You could have an NFT to person link that said, those were the reviewers. But then once you have, NFT to person author, NFT to person reviewer, NFT to NFT citation, and NFT to content ID, the body of the thing it represents, that one I actually think is really simple. And that's why in the metagame thing, I wrote the meta pubs as a result of writing the meta skills sort of ideation, is because I do actually think getting a really simple publication standard NFT, like I just described, would be a good way to build up to skills, because then you might even imagine that a skill is pegged back to a publication. I might publish a handbook related to the skill or an outline related to what the skill means. So you could have in the skills NFT a link to a publication type NFT that encodes the information the skill is meant to embody.
I see.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to run because I actually had another call. I just didn't go to it because I thought this was important, and now I'm gonna go to it probably 30 minutes late because I need a drink.
Can I ask a quick question right before you hop off? So so you're obviously like the sort of benevolent, overlord person convening all the people from all these different spreads. So like, what's the sort of motivation of pushing this? Like, why is this top of stack for you right now? And how do you sort of see this fitting in on either the comments side or?
Yeah, two reasons. One is I kind of love-hate the way this works in the world now. I have tons of really expensive pieces of paper. I also know people with really expensive pieces of paper who are useless. I also know people with 0 pieces of paper who are incredibly useful. And I want the world to function. I don't like the way it functions now.
Okay, so this is in direct reference to education and PhD and credentialing, right? Like education credentialing in particular.
I mean, I don't need it to replace the current education credentialing in the sense that I need it instead of a PhD. I say this because I literally need to hire people all the time. I'm massively capacity constrained. I spend a shit ton of money teaching people things. I retain little to none of the benefit of the effort that I extend teaching people stuff. And at the very minimum, I want to be able to have the credentials I produce by teaching people have consistent value. Like, there's a lot of aspects to this, but let's just say that this is like one of my biggest pain points in the world is that we have this dichotomy between people who are extremely, let's say, like classist and in the sense of credentials, like credentialist, and then we have the other extreme, which is people who are like flat worlders who don't seem to understand that skills are real. And so somewhere in between there are real skills, and I need real skills, and I need to put them to work, and I need to put them to work for their own benefit, for my benefit. And I'm just tired of the dichotomy between, hey, there's this flat world where everyone's equal and we can all do all the things. I'm like, no, you can't. I know, I try, but then people fail, and I'm like, look, I just need to find the people who can do the thing and work with them, and it'll be fun, and I don't need to tell them what to do, but I want to be able to trust them to do their job. And at the other end, I get this credentialism problem where, like, yeah, I know a bunch of people with Ivy League PhDs. Doesn't necessarily help me because that's not the same as their ability to do the thing I actually need to get done.
Right. Okay. So there's a bit of a talent pull demand here that I think is it's nice to know the sort of the real world use cases that sort of drive these things.
Yeah, well, the same thing the lawyer brought up. It's every group I know in Web3 that has real skill dependence is suffering from skill crunch because it's really difficult to find and maintain skilled people in an environment that lacks a credentialing system. The problem is we don't want an old school credentialing system that is sort of artificial. We don't necessarily want the world is flat, anyone can do this, because it's just not true.
Right.
I guess like a stretch goal once we have all this is automated educational software.
Sure, but it's also bottom-up automated educational software. Like, once you start building the software that provides the credentials, we can say, well, someone produces their own course material, issues their own certificate, and starts to build a following around a set of skills that you can enter that system and build merit on your own, like, basically build the merit of that education without having to appeal to an intellectual authority to bless the thing that you're doing, which is particularly important in the Web3 context, where a lot of the skills that we're talking about, like, there isn't anybody qualified to bless the intellectual authority of this work.
Right.
Yeah, can you
But
release
I think that there are people, they just have to be super busy. So we got to find a way to, make the, top 50 most productive and competent Web3 people to be the credentialing.
Exactly why we tried to get a bunch of them on the call, to get them to buy into the idea, right? Like, there's a reason why this needed to include those people, because if we have to solve this problem, we need to be easy for them to just be like, aha, boom. Now I can attest to the people that I know have the skill. And yeah, there's really a dozen people that I could attest to certain high value skills for. And I would love to do that. It's good for them, it's good for me, whatever. But until there's a framework such that that value can propagate and that other people follow the same pattern, we'll never get the systemic effect of this credentialing system.
Right. Yeah, I think I just want to make one quick comment, because I think that the output here is a standard. And I think, in the chaotic sort of organizational methods that are happening right now for the whole, Web3 development, it's mostly like you build I've seen it happen the other way, which is like less about like you get to define the standards, more like you grow big enough that you become standard.
See, I have seen that, but I think that doesn't work for everything. Some things can't grow without the standards. This is one of them. Nothing about this would work unless it was being done from the bottom up. Because think about it. If you try to use a platform to create the skills standard, you would effectively lose the cross-platform property, which is, I think, critical to it. We need, because this is skills and publications. They're not specific to Ethereum or any particular even blockchain.
Transactions,
they're
tracking,
a fundamental
and tax,
relational concept.
So our
what
next
we need
teacher
is to represent them in a way that they can reference each other even across those platforms. That's why I talk about things like content addresses and public key, private key pairs, because when it really comes down to it, you could add some metadata that says this is a public key from Ethereum, or this is a CID from this particular content hashing protocol, and libp2p has a lot of that stuff in it already, the Protocol Labs world. Like, the idea that I'm trying to dig at here is that, defined correctly, this is both bigger and smaller than any particular platform at the same time. It's so simple that every platform that wants to become the big guy and grow would simply adhere to it, and that but so big that every platform that did that could still be thought of as part of the same meta platform or system. And it's like that tricky, like, so simple property that makes that possible, and that can only be done with a little bit of standards development work. And honestly, to go back to both ERC20s and ERC721s propagated beyond the scope of Ethereum. They
were born, but they were born on Ethereum. They became popular because of Ethereum's popularity. Like,
but Ethereum is the catalyst, not the thing. Think about the difference between the pattern ERC20. So there were tokens, just tokens. Then there was a standard for tokens, and the standard for tokens caused the breakout growth. Similarly with NFTs, there were kind of NFTs. They're just single instances of a token with quantity 1. And yet then there was a standard for them with some understanding of how metadata worked in their context, and they suddenly exploded. They grew beyond the boundaries. And to be clear, there are already people trying to put skills on chain. It's just that it doesn't really work until you have a standard. It can't explode because it's the network effects themselves. The fact that, who gave the skill? Who else has the skill? What other skills are related? Like, who else has the skills in a cluster? It's the graph that defines the value of skills. So until you can propagate, there's no value. So it's inside out. That's part of the reason why I think we need a standards group and that we should focus on stupid simple than building prototypes. Because to your point, the prototypes are the thing that are going to make it take off. But the prototypes without the standard are going to prevent it from actually being valuable.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think for me, I think there's two parts. There's the intellectual exercise of boiling down what is the thing, and that is sort of challenging and interesting on its own right as an intellectual exercise. And then there's the largest thing in the market, and that's really a hustle game, And so to me, both are important. I wouldn't necessarily say that and a lot. Also, I'm trying to say just from a purely sort of pragmatic perspective is that if you want to make the biggest thing in the world, it's probably 70% hustle and 30% standards, would be my balance on it.
Sure, but that's in net, not in order. So what I'm basically saying is that this is sequenced,
sure,
and then we are at the standards problem, because realize lots of people are already hustling. There was almost nobody on that call who hadn't tried to solve, even potentially implemented a subset of this solution. Right? Because people are pushing on this. The bottleneck here is the convergence, and then back to hustle, right? Suppose we get some convergence, and then Metagame gets their profiles thing, Raid Guild gets their thing up and running. These orgs, maybe they'll collaborate, maybe they'll compete, maybe they'll just be separate. The LexDAO guys are going to start building, skill trees around legal. The token engineering guys are going to start building, skill trees around token engineering, and then you can all hustle in your own direction, and the thing can grow. But that comes back to the whole ERC20 or ERC711 model. So I'm totally with you, actually. So one thing is what is the roadmap? What does success mean? For me, having cared about this problem for some time, literally that doc that I shared was 2 years old, plus it's not the first time I thought about it anyway. I'm seeing this as a watershed moment where if we can standardize it a little bit, the hustle can take hold and it can fly off the rails.
Makes sense. Sweet, man. Love it. Thank you. I mean, I think you should have opened with that, because then the whole call would have made a lot more sense to me. Otherwise, there's a bunch of random people who are all pretty interesting in their own right, but it was not clear to me what the sort of strategy was, so to speak. So I think if I can make a quick suggestion, next time we have one of these sync calls, you start with a first 10-minute spiel, and then we go back into the
cool. Actually, in the interest of kicking things off, do you have any interest in just trying to write a short paragraph? Because put it in a HackMD and share it in the Telegram channel, and people can comment. But one of the things I'm trying to accomplish here is also not being the dictator of the project. I'm trying to be hey guys, you all need this. We all want this. Bunch of you have a ton of expertise. I've thought about some of the deeper theory side stuff, but to your point, it's time to go. So let's just agree on a standard. It almost doesn't matter what it is as long as we all agree on it, and then get to building stuff.
Yeah, it's 2:30 a.m. here. I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna think about this a little bit more, and I'll put something in the Telegram.
That is a good answer. Holy shit. Well, thanks for staying up with us, and I am really gonna bounce now. But I will see you guys all in.
Cool. This is nice. I can see a lot of energy here.
Thanks,
Thank
you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Zargham speech, please.
Yep.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
See you.